Kindercore Vinyl is a record pressing plant in Athens, Georgia, and they press some pretty notable records. You freaking pressed a record for my house band, Ghost Cave.
Yeah, we did. That was one of my favorite records we did.
I'm going to put a link in the description, so if you want to buy this, you can. You not only run the 7-inch press at Kindercore, you're also one of the founders, so you know a few things about records. Like, can you tell us, just give us a quick rundown how they're made? Yeah, here's the 7-inch press. It's beautiful.
Yeah, look at that.
It's like made by these guys that make MRI machines, so this is not one of those old crappy.
No, this is not the new hotness from.
This is the new hotness. This is a clip from the promo for that Christmas record that Ghost Cave did. And it shows actually Ryan pressing the record.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let's see it. All right. Show us what we're seeing here, man.
So that's the floor of Kindercore, and this is the 7-inch press right now. That's the trimmer. And it's about to trim the excess vinyl off the edges of the record after it's been pressed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so it's basically, and then this guy sucks it up with some suction cups.
Absolutely, and then drops it off on these cooling plates.
On the spindles. Now, that doesn't hurt it to go right on top of another record right after it gets pressed?
No, they cool enough that it's fine, and then they have those plates that you just saw are cooling plates that go in between every 10 or 15 records, depending on how the run's going.
Right.
And they keep everything flat, so.
And so what we're seeing here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's like a biscuit.
Yes,
those are the pellets.
Right here, what you're seeing so they're pellets of vinyl that go into this hopper, and they go up that long extruder tube that you just saw. And this thing hopefully is about to open, and it will show you a puck of vinyl or a biscuit, depending.
Yep. There it goes.
So that's how much vinyl it takes to make a 7-inch. It goes in there. It gets slammed down, and the music gets pushed into the hot vinyl from the stampers that are on the top and the bottom.
Right, and there goes the red.
There.
And so, very cool. Yeah, and these are some of the colors that they did for the record. I mean, and pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm just going to let it go through all of them because it was really nice. Do you reuse the excess vinyl that you cut?
Yeah.
Senor Gato wants to know. So it's like called regrind, right?
Yeah, regrind, recycled vinyl. Yeah, it's but yeah, absolutely. We trim that off and we keep it clean and in containers, and then we grind it up, and then it gets worked back in runs. And we do some things, to make runs more affordable. We do have 100% recycled vinyl stuff that we do sometimes. So there's that as well.
Right. I think I might have used that when I was helping.
I think we did. Yeah, I think that might have been what we did.
Guys, they make stampers, right? Like these things.
Yeah.
It's like basically they'll make a metal, you'll send your music and then somebody makes it. You outsource that, right, into these metal stampers,
yes.
Right?
So they take a blank disc that's called a lacquer or an acetate, and it's basically an aluminum disc on the inside, and then on the outside it's coated with acetate. It's essentially like nail polish. A lathe, which is basically a reverse record player. So instead of having a needle that plays the music back, it has a cutting needle that cuts through the vinyl. So they take the audio source and play it through that, and they have to make sure that the grooves don't touch each other. So when you look at a record under a microscope, it's not just a bunch of circular lines, it's actually sound waves. So they have to keep depending on the volume and the complexity of the music at any given time, they have to keep those grooves from touching each other, or else the needle will jump out. They do that, then they take that lacquer and they attach it to the spinning motor and they spray it with liquid silver. Then that dries, and they take that and they put it in a chemical bath. There's nickel in there, and an electrical shock through the chemicals pulls that nickel onto the silver. You pull it off, and then you get that thing that you have right there in that picture, a stamper. And so then they can take that and coin it so that it fits on our presses. So you can see when we were watching that thing a minute ago, you can see it going through there and pressing into the records. A couple of questions. Is the stamper only good for so many pressings? Yes, that's true. A stamper usually lasts for around 1,000 records, but a stamper can also last for 0 records or 2 records, just depending.
Right.
Really fragile.
Like if this manufacturing defect or something happens.
Or if, while you're running the job, there's always the possibility that something will fall into the press, just due to stress, it'll tear apart early. But a general rule of thumb is that you can get about 1,000 records out of them.
The Pure Ed has a question here about mastering for vinyl.
Okay, I've heard some vinyl that sounded much worse than the CD, bad master. Okay, because vinyl is so much more of a physical medium than digital, than CDs, there are a lot of reasons why it might sound bad. Without actually listening to the record that you're talking about, it's hard to say if it's the mastering or if it's some other issue. And we'll get into that at some point. I think you probably are going to ask me some questions about things like
what makes it sound good and what makes it sound bad and so forth.
But it is important though to get a master done for vinyl. Like it is important to get a master done, especially for vinyl, because it does have different dynamic range than digital does. So,
and when sequencing, one needs to put the songs with the greatest dynamics at the outside of the disc, and the more right, because that really, it's because of the physics of how it works. It's better to have so that's one of the reasons you might sometimes see like ballads and stuff in that spot.
And
I'm getting next to you here. I'm moving over next to you.
Yeah, come on in. If I was better at this, I would put my arm around you convincingly.
You can.
There you go.
You can, man.
Lovely. When vinyl was the predominant form of media, album sequencing was based solely around what worked best for a vinyl project. And so, you can go back and see where that was something that happened regularly. It doesn't happen as regularly anymore, which is sometimes a problem, because then people take a record that they've done without any consideration of that part of the dynamics of it, and they just, it doesn't sound right because they didn't sequence it right. So vinyl is wild. There's a million things that can go wrong at any given time. It's something else, but it's magic. I mean, that's why.
You and your colleague Cash have described it to me as being like a mixture of science and magic. That makes it happen. Because
it's like
you can think you're doing everything exactly the same way, and then
you come in one day and it's raining and everything's different all of a sudden. It can be really frustrating, but also that's what makes it so exciting, because when you get it right and it sounds great, it's magic.
Like, do you guys have like mastering people you recommend, or you basically just say, somebody just knows what they're doing with vinyl mastering?
I mean, there are tons of people that know what they're doing, but we do have people that we like. We do have people that, do stuff for us regularly. So, I mean, there are plenty of times when somebody will come and just say like, hey, I made a record, or they haven't even done it yet. I have some songs and I want to make a record at some point. And we'll help walk them through what it's going to take to do it, including setting them up with people. I mean, the other day I hooked him up with a studio to go to record his songs, so he could eventually come to us and make a record out of them. Senior Gatto has asked the same question. I missed it earlier. But
yes. Do we have the glitter vinyl? And he also asked, he said he had 2 different pressings of the same album that were color and black vinyl, and they sound different.
Yeah, so we can get into that. That's a thing. But first, I'll answer the glitter vinyl question. I have some glitter vinyl records from the 90s, and my cat is now banging into the desk and making it seem like there's an earthquake here. So I have some 90s.
This is very high tech, folks.
It is very high tech. I have some 90s glitter vinyl that I think was made like a picture disc is made, where there's something in the middle that is like a glitter like glitter vinyl, actual record, but a strip.
It's basically there's a core, and then they just basically print the record onto a thin sticker.
Exactly. So we do metallic vinyl, and some of the stuff that we did for Ghost Cave was metallic stuff. Yeah. And so that does have metallic elements in it. You can do all kinds of things. It just depends on how good you want it to sound. I could dump some glitter onto a puck and press a record, and it would be a record. Now, chances are some of that glitter is going to be sticking out of the grooves, and a needle would run through it and maybe break the needle, maybe skip at the very least. I mean, I've seen people tear up dollar bills and put them into a puck before. It doesn't always work, though. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So,
they're asking
what's
the
your cat's name?
The cat's name is Honey Lemon.
what do you think about different colors?
Oh, yeah.
Like black is a color too, because
It
it's
is.
not like PVC is born black.
No, it's not. In fact, there is natural PVC, which is basically like off-white. It's not, it's like semi-translucent, and that sounds good too. Yeah, you have a glitter record and it skips like mad. That's probably because the glitter is actually coming out of the grooves and
Sticking out of the grooves.
So,
all right.
But I was gonna show you. So here's
What's up? Shout out to Poppy.
This is a red vinyl record here. This record sounds fantastic. The color isn't what makes it sound good or bad. The way that it's pressed, the way that it's cut first. So go all the way back to the beginning. The way that it's recorded is the first part, right? So say you have something and it's recorded great. The cutting of the record is great. Everything sounds good. You get a test pressing on black vinyl and it sounds just like you want. But you ordered the record on white vinyl, for example, let's say. And you ordered it from a pressing plant that maybe doesn't pay enough attention to the temperatures that they're cooking. White vinyl, for example, people always say that white vinyl sounds bad. And generally, white vinyl records have sounded pretty bad.
Right.
But
and glow in the dark too, right?
All right. Well, that's a different story. We'll get to that one in a second. Let's do white first stuff. So with white, you have to cook it at a really low temperature, right? Because if you cook it any higher, then it burns and then it becomes gray vinyl, right? Or it's white vinyl with a black spot in the middle of it,
Ugh.
Which everybody hates, right? But it's really difficult to not get that. You have to run white vinyl at a really low temperature. The lower the temperature that you run it at, the plastic is essentially in a different form. So PVC when it's cold is hard, right? Like a record or like pellets. When you heat it up, it gets soft.
Hold on, I got a picture.
But there it is. So somewhere in between that phase and when it's a puck, if it's not heated just enough, it's basically like a super ball, right? Like it's like rubbery. Then it's going to bounce around and it's not going to sound as good. Or you're going to heat it for too long and you're going to wind up with burnt vinyl, and then that sounds bad too. Truth is that colored vinyl and black vinyl, all kinds of vinyl can sound great. They just have to be pressed correctly.
Yeah, we're going to eventually get a cat on.
Oh, here, I got a cat. Can be real disappointed.
Hi.
She did this. All right, let's see. Go in the.
Hi, kitty.
Right, there's Honey Lemon. She's going to be real sad that a couple years ago she walked into my office.
Hi, Honey Lemon.
So yeah, she's a good cat.
And also, to go back to the colored vinyl thing, like back in the day, like colored vinyl was the norm, right? It was like country records were red, church records were yellow, children's records were yellow.
Yeah, children's records were yellow. Yeah, that was a thing. I mean, certainly not like completely. I mean, like, I think black vinyl has generally always been the main thing. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was the colors denoted different genres.
I actually meant to do a graph of that and show everybody online on the screen, but I didn't get around to it. But I will say that one of the best sounding Beatles records of all time is red vinyl.
Oh yeah,
and it's the Japanese mono pressings from the 1970s. There was a box set of all the albums done.
Oh yeah,
and there's some of the finest. And you probably know this, but the Beatles mixes. The Beatles had a hand in their mono mixes.
Yes.
But they had nothing to do with the stereo mixes. So
those were all done at night by the night engineer. Yeah.
Exactly. And so and so the mono ones are really supposed to be kind of truer, and they're actually quite different.
And they sound. I mean, the Beatles sound. I'm sorry, I'm to be distracted, but my dog. I'm trying to get my dog on camera now.
So you're a Beatles fan.
I'm a huge Beatles fan. And
do you have the mono records of all? I do. You have the box set of monos?
No, I bought them all individually. Because I didn't. Well, actually, I traded for them all individually. I traded a bunch of stuff to a Second and Charles and got them all.
They're extremely expensive now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But so no, those sound amazing. And the coolest thing about them is it makes you realize that the Beatles were much more of like a rock band than you think they were, because like there's a lot of big guitars like on Sgt. Pepper and Revolver especially. Before they reissued them in mono, my original copies of Revolver, Rubber Soul, and Sgt. Pepper in mono were like my most prized records.
I have like the Giles Martin, like.
Oh yeah, I love those. Those are great.
Yeah, he did a great job with those. Like the stereo of Revolver, and then I just purchased the mono of like the Capitol one, just as a sort of oddity. One, because I love the record and it's an original pressing, but I'm sure it sounds terrible, and several of the songs are missing. But that's part of the interesting nature of the that whole story is just how the American releases differed.
Yeah, the
and-
sequencing was different. Yeah, absolutely.
and the sound was
Yeah.
they mixed them completely differently.
Yeah.
They put like them through a compressor and they took stereo and turned it into mono and folded it down
Yeah.
and then ran it through another compressor. And then so it sounds tinny and I don't know, we won't have to talk about Beatles records, but it just goes to show you viewers it really has so much to do with mastering and
All the things.
preparation
Yeah,
of the files.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like the quality of the vinyl can be
Absolutely.
pristine, but if the master sucks, then you're done.
Yeah.
You're
No,
doomed.
I mean, garbage in, garbage out. It's true of anything, right?
Your thoughts on the state of the industry, man, because things are looking pretty intense. Demand is through the roof.
Yeah.
And as Sloan Brothers said in their song Kindercore Blues,
Yeah.
things are looking tough down at the record plant.
It's
You got a record to put out and you just can't.
yeah, it's pandemic related. I mean, this is all, before the pandemic started, it took about 3 to 4 months to get a record pressed.
Yep.
Oh, we're at 9 to 10 months.
Right.
I know
that's lucky. If you can do it in less than a
I was
year,
gonna say,
you're
I
doing
know there are a
well.
lot of places that are over a year, right? It's really difficult, and it comes down. I mean, it goes through all layers of things, right? So when you're pressing a record, you need to do all the things that we already talked about, like making the master and getting the stampers and all those things. So those things are shipped. When the pandemic really kicked in, we lost 60% of the trucking industry. We lost 60% of truck drivers. And people talk about it like, oh, why can't 40% of truck drivers do the same job as 100%? I mean, it's wild. Like, it starts at that. That's the first part of it, right? Because everything we do has to ship from one place to another place to another place.
Mm-hmm.
Add to that there's a nickel shortage, which is what you
Yeah.
use to make the stampers. There's a PVC shortage.
Yep.
There's a paper shortage. We just got
And then the one plant that made the other one of the half of the places that made stampers, like it burned down.
There
or
were
something,
2
right?
places in the world that made the lacquer discs that you cut the master into. One was an old man in his garage in Japan, and the other one
Oh,
was
boy.
a big factory in California. The big factory in California burned down
What?
2 months before COVID. We were all sitting around
Ah,
going, oh my God, this is going to destroy the industry. Then COVID happened. So now all of the lacquers in the world are coming from this man's garage in Japan.
you're kidding me. It's one guy.
Yeah, the entire industry is propped up on that.
Why is there not somebody moving in to disrupt the situation? It seems like somebody should be doing that.
It's incredibly complicated to make those lacquer
Right.
discs. It's super
Right.
expensive, and it involves horrible chemicals. The place that burned down was in California. They'd never be able to rebuild that business in California. They'd have to move
Right.
to a state that didn't have environmental laws. So
Right.
there's that. But yeah, so I mean, like, if you look, that's one problem. But then like 2 months after that, COVID happened. You go from all the things I talked about, like paper shortages, all those things, factories shutting down,
Yeah.
printing factories
Got a
shutting
monopoly.
down for a while, all that stuff, right? But then on top of all of that, when any of the equipment breaks, there's such a shortage of metal parts right now. We had 2 presses that were down. We're now only have 1 press that's down, but we had 2 down for months because we were waiting on a part, and they just couldn't get the machined aluminum.
Cash was saying there was like this one fuse or
Yeah,
something.
that was one. Yeah, we had that.
And then
Thing.
he found 3 of them existed in the world, so he bought all 3 of them.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
And he needed 2. You guys needed 2 or 1.
Yep.
Now you have 2 more fuses, and then at the end of that,
Hopefully someone's made another one since then.
yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah,
What
because that
the
was like
heck?
8 months ago. Even that was a nightmare. Things are crazy. But here's the other thing, though, is that the reason
Yeah,
why
yeah.
there's all this demand now, when the lockdown happened, everybody stopped
Yeah.
going out. Everybody stopped going to shows. They stopped doing all that stuff. We were all sitting in our houses, and we were like, "Hey, let's all buy cool records because that's what."
Yeah,
we want to do.
I actually did. I actually did start. I mean, I already was a vinyl listener.
Yeah.
But I had more time at home, man.
Yeah.
And my wife, Penny Ball, got very into it and started getting
Yeah.
all the Rush records she could get her hands on.
Oh. Well, I'm sorry for both of you. No, I'm kidding.
I love Kenny Lee.
But so she Rush found their one female fan, huh? Um,
Yeah, she's into it.
but
She's really into Geddy Lee, man. He's cool. I'm into it. So, so we had the chicane is in the house. What's up, chicane? And he says, they say, lately I'm seeing regular LPs selling for $40 or more, but protection and pressing costs don't seem to have
oh
changed
yes, they have.
radically.
They have. Production
It's
costs
so
have increased a ton.
yeah, so it's a combination of that
Yeah,
and
and
demand
demand. Yep.
and collector. Yeah, like you say, the other part is also true to chicane. It is collector and retail price hikes.
It is, yeah, definitely. That's definitely a part of it. People are, especially with the pandemic driven demand. There was
Yeah.
a new drive for limited colors, special printed things, jackets with spot gloss, all that kind of stuff. Those things
Yep.
are really expensive. A gatefold jacket is more than twice as much as a single pocket jacket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It's
the
crazy.
stuff is really expensive and it takes a really long time to make. The problem, people are like, oh, well, records used to be $2, and it's like, yeah, but that they used to cost like 50 cents to make, uh,
Yeah, and all of those production chain issues you were talking about
uh-huh.
affect the cost of PVC and all the other
Oh,
materials.
absolutely. And everything has had price hikes,
Like
everything.
PC PVC, Cash told me the PVC has raised prices 3 times or something in the last few months.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, we just found out from one of our printers that there's going to be a price hike next week, and they don't even know what the price hike is going to be until after it happens.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it's a wild world, but I mean, we're still, we're slammed, we're pressing
Yeah, you guys are
thousands of
doing good
records.
business. I mean, it's a good problem to have that you have more business than you can
Yeah, we're
possibly
running
do
70,
almost.
80,000 records a month. It's wild.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, are any of them terrible?
Oh, many
I'm just kidding.
many of them are terrible, but many of them are amazing. So there's that.
Yeah. Here's my other question: is Record Store Day helping or hurting? Be
It's hurting,
honest.
absolutely. I'm sure it helps record stores,
Yeah.
but I think it's hurting the overall industry because it's making it more difficult at specific times of year, sort of like artificially goosing the demand at different times of year, and it winds up, making it so that it takes much longer to get stuff done. Making it so that certain colors wind up being in high demand and unavailable. But Record Store
Yeah.
Day started out as a wonderfully well-intentioned thing, and I'm sure a lot of people have fun with it every year. We
Yep.
certainly have pressed some really cool stuff for it, but
Yeah.
it'd be fine with me if it was over.
Yeah, I mean, every time it comes around, there's maybe one or two records that I'm like, I'd like to have that.
Yeah,
But like from a consumer's point of view, it seems like such a cash grab, and also they're just like everything is just being repressed again and again and again,
right.
and I get that there's a nostalgia market, and hey, at difficult times we want to listen to old records. I want to listen to old records. We were just talking about the Beatles.
Yeah,
However, there have been complaints that they're filling up all the capacity of the system with with reprints of
right. I
rumors.
mean, nobody needs another copy of a Pablo Cruz record. You can go to any thrift store in the world and find that,
Right, right.
But then they actually were Record Store Day reissuing stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I could do without all that stuff, certainly.
Well, but there's actually one coming that looked really cool. There's an Art Pepper mono record
Mhm.
coming. And he's an artist I've only listened to a little bit, but he's amazing jazz artist. In any case, um, all right. And now this is actually another industry question. All right, let's say I buy a brand new record at Target and
Okay.
it's warped.
Hmm.
Whose fault is it? Is it Target's fault? Is it the
Might be.
manufacturer's fault?
It could be. Could be the shipper's fault.
I mean, usually they're shipping them pretty well. Right? I mean, if I like,
Well, it
say I walk
depends if
into the
that
store and
truck's.
buy it off the shelf.
I mean, if say so. I mean, like, I'm not trying to be a smartass when I say that, but absolutely, like, you can press a brand new record and warp it while you're pressing it if you leave it. If you let it sit too long on
Right.
the press.
That was my
So there's
question. Yeah,
so
is it
that
people
can happen.
rushing?
But
Yeah.
just because a new record is warped doesn't mean it happened at the plant. Because if that
Yeah.
record sits in a UPS truck in the middle of the sun in 100-degree weather for a
Boom.
weekend, which is what happens. Like, records
Yep.
sit in trucks over the weekend and they get warped, and then they go put them in a store, or if they go take it to that
Yes.
retail store and that store doesn't take care of it. So I mean, that is,
Yep.
it is a problem. Like, I know before I started pressing records, I was just like everybody else that got really frustrated. Oh, I bought a new record and it was warped. How could this be possible? And then you realize there's a million ways that it could be possible. So it definitely sucks. But, you know, I mean, that's like, look, it's like records in general. It's like trying to take care of an endangered species, you know? Like you're just trying to keep the thing from falling apart the whole time. From the minute that you think of making it until it's in the store, until you bring it to your house, the whole time. Like I could drop this right now and it would never be good again. You know.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
What is the all right, so let's speaking of which, so that means where I'm just going to ask you one more question and then you're going to show me your records that you all right, so where do you buy your records? You like to go to small independent shops?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I go in Athens, I shop at either Blow Yo-Yo stuff or Walk Street.
Walk
But
Street.
yeah, I mean that's, you know, that's generally what I do, or when I'm out. I will say that, you know, the since I've been pressing records all the time, I buy less records than I would normally, because I'm just around them all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, and my twin obsessions are records and toys. So I think I sometimes lean a little harder into the toys because I spend so much time around records.
Yeah, I can imagine that you would not want to surround yourself with records on the weekend after you're not working all week.
Right. Yeah.
So, how many records do you have, and what genres do you collect, and what band are you obsessed with? Is it the Beatles?
Yeah, I would say the Beatles is the band that I have. I mean, I have like 4 different versions of Revolver. You know, I mean, like, yeah, the Beatles are my favorite band. I have no idea how many records I have actually.
Thousands, multiple. Are they at your house, or do you have a storage space for them?
No, see, I don't have that many. I've got hundreds, but mine are spread between my house and the factory and my office at the factory.
Yeah, right.
And so,
right, yeah.
you know, I mean, I've got hundreds. Of the, you know,
right. Your archive of the records you've pressed is at the factory.
Absolutely, but also a ton of my personal collection is up there too. A ton of my personal collection is up at the plant because I got to have stuff to listen to in my office. So,
yeah, right.
So, you know, which is also a thing because then I'm at home and I'm like, where the hell is this record? I know I have it. Oh, it's at work. But yeah, so I have a lot. I mostly, I'm into, you know, my favorite genre is probably, you know, 60s pop, psychedelic,
yeah,
soul, garage, late 60s and early 70s funk, punk rock. I'm not really into jazz.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know.
It's okay.
Yeah,
it's all right. So here's a question. Speaking of records, I'm gonna ask you one more question before we go and look at the cute animal pictures.
Yeah.
What makes a record sound absolutely amazing? Like when I hear, like I have a mobile fidelity record.
Yeah.
What makes a mobile fidelity copy of, you know, Kind of Blue sound so much better than like a regular version or a gray market repress?
Attention to detail.
Right.
There were probably versions of that MoFi record that didn't sound good, but they didn't ship those. You know,
right.
One of the biggest things that we pride ourselves on is quality control, and so we're looking at and listening to a lot of the records that are coming off. We're looking at every single one. You know, there are factories that the record comes straight off the press and goes right into a sleeve, and no human looks at it. And that's how you wind up with records that have labels stuck on the playable surface, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of it is attention to detail. It's caring, you know, it's keeping the equipment serviced, keeping the equipment clean. I mean, the biggest thing that makes bad sounding records is someone not paying attention.
Right.
You know?
And also bad source material, right? These gray market ones are probably pressing it from their source is like a CD or something. Right. And then like MoFi is like getting somebody who's an amazing masterer to pull a direct metal master from the masters or something.
And a lot of those are like the half speed that, you know, they're 45 RPM pressings, which sound better.
Right.
The faster the record is spinning, the better it sounds. So, you know, a 45 cut correctly is going to sound better than a 33.